Let's begin with a word of prayer together. Gracious God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be pleasing and strengthening to you, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Let's begin thinking about this series called Beyond the Frame, focusing on the moment for the day. Began to think about photography a little bit and what photographers do to take pictures and what all that means. When I was a kid, I did not have access to my phone to see anything around the world I wanted in a matter of seconds. So my grandparents, when I was a very young little kid, gifted me a subscription to National Geographic. And that gave me a window into the world. And so that gave me a window to the world. I could see people and places all around the world. And I couldn't wait for that subscription to show up each month. This month, it's taking me to Africa. Next month, it's taking me somewhere else. It's taking me all these different places. I think Danetta realized her microphone is still on.
Oh my gosh.
And so that magazine was a great magazine for me. And out of all those places, it had all kinds of articles about stuff. But one of the things I loved the most about that magazine were the pictures, the photographs that you could see, close-ups of people, landscapes of beautiful places that kind of set my mind on a dream of places I like to go, people I like to meet, things that I might want to experience in the world. I began to think about, how did that photographer take that shot? Did they just happen to be lucky to be in the right place at the right time, took the photo, and they have captured that? Or how did they take that landscape perspective? How did that angle happen? Were they up on a mountain? Were they in a helicopter? How did they take that particular photo and make that happen? And so begin to think about the things that if you're going to focus on the moment and get the right picture, there's a few things that have to be in place for that photograph to be taken. Now, the scripture passage that Danetta talked about from the Gospel of John is like, what does photography have anything to do with John chapter 20? Well, I will do my best to kind of merge those two things together today. But one of the things that was interesting to me in this story is that it's a story many of us have seen or read more than once, is the notion of Thomas in here. He gets that bad kind of declaration of that adjective right before his name of doubting. Now, if we're really truth about it, all of the disciples doubted, wondered, questioned. Why was it that Thomas was kind of stuck out there on the end of a limb with that nomenclature when others had the same kind of notion in their life of what to believe, what not to believe? And I think the notion for this tag of doubting had to be because in John's gospel, at least the first time Jesus came, Thomas wasn't present. Now, maybe he was out to the grocery store, maybe his car needed some gasoline, maybe he wanted to go see a long-lost friend. I'm not sure why Thomas wasn't with the other disciples, but he wasn't. And Jesus visits the disciples when Thomas is not there, and they're all excited about what they've seen, what they've experienced. And there's excitement about all of that, except Thomas, when he comes back, says, I'm not going to believe it. Until I see it, I'm not going to believe it. And I'm sure the disciples had lots of persuasive statements, and you got to believe, Thomas, I saw this, I witnessed this, I heard this. And Thomas wasn't having any of that whatsoever in the dialogue with his friends. And then Jesus returns a second time and gave Thomas the opportunity for his own experience like the other disciples had that in the first visit. As I think about the story of Thomas's experience, it made me think about some of the steps a photographer goes through to take the right picture and to focus on the right moment. And there are three things I want to highlight about photography that I think has something to do with this text and our lives at the same time. Now, a person that's behind the camera, and if they're going to focus on the moment, the first ingredient, this almost looks like a dumb thing to say, but it's an important thing to say. In order to take that picture, you have to be present for it. That sounds like, well, duh, but you have to be present for the picture. You have to be there when the moment happens. Now, to be present, you have to put yourself in a place where that experience is possible. Now, Jesus in this story recognizes maybe that Thomas wasn't there and affords Thomas the opportunity, his own experience. Jesus gifts Thomas with the gift of presence. Now, in pastoral care circles, when we're caring for people and nurturing people, one of the best gifts that we give a person is to be present for them. If there is a loss of life, a loss of job, some significant struggle that someone's going through, maybe it's a great celebration, maybe it's a graduation or some great accomplishment. If you want to be with them, you got to be present. You can't just, you can send cards, those are good things to do, but the impact of your presence in the moment cannot be counted enough. Jesus decides to be present with the disciples, and he could have easily said, well, Thomas is a good enough guy, he'll figure it out on his own. But Jesus decides to go back a second time. He decides to be present so that every disciple has an opportunity to see him and experience him. And it's a tremendous gift of presence in that way. And we encounter that all throughout the life of the church. When there's a loss of life, or there's the need of food, or there's the need of anything, we have our care groups and friendships and connections to reach out to people and be present to people. Not to offer them up all the wisdom we have. Well, in my experience, I did this, and in my experience, I did this. Presence does not mean pontificating all that we know. It's simply being present with a listening ear so that someone else can be nurtured and strengthened along the way. I think that's what Jesus does for Thomas when it seems like it's overkill or overdone. But Jesus' presence cannot be minimized in terms of who he chooses to be with and why. Now, the second part of photography that I think is important if you're going to get the right kind of picture, and that is patience. Now, many times if a photographer wants a particular shot, they're not going to say, well, I need to be there right at 5 o'clock when the sun's setting, and if I get there at 4:50 and set up my equipment, right when 5 o'clock hits, and I take the photograph, I'm going to get the perfect shot. And that's not how it works. More cases than not, if you're going to take a landscape shot and you want this particular background, you sometimes might camp out of that spot 3 or 4 days to make sure the right thing appears and you can take that photo. And there's something about the patience of the moment. If you feel like you've got the right spot and the right angle and the right backdrop for whatever you want to take, it sometimes takes some time for that to materialize, for the right thing to emerge. And one of the things that we do not have in our day is patience. We don't have patience with other people's ideas. We don't have patience with other people's theological perspectives. We don't have patience for other people's political persuasions. We don't have patience when we're on the road, on the highways. When I go up Highway 69 and hit that construction, my knuckles are starting to grip a little bit. And patience is kind of a thin thing. We think we're patient, but we're really maybe not as patient as we think we are. And patience is an extreme gift we give to one another. Recognizing that everyone's journey through stuff is on a different timeline. Some people can work through something in a week. It takes other people a month and other people years to work through the very things that they're struggling with in their minds. And patience is a gift for people. I think of all the photography that I've seen people take through the years, the particular people. You just don't just show up, take your photo and go. And we are in an age where we used to be able to sit and absorb more material over a longer period of time, and our attention spans have shrunk and shrunk and shrunk. I remember reading back in the history of the Disciples of Christ movement when one of our founders, Alexander Campbell, used to travel the frontier, the Midwestern frontier, and he would go from place to place, and on the weekends, he would do debates with people that he disagreed with. And this debate would be a weekend-long debate. Imagine loading up your family on a horse and carriage, going up to this local church, anticipating that your weekend activity is to listen to a debate between two people. And that's what people did on their weekends. They spent an entire weekend listening to two people talk and argue back and forth with one another. I'm not sure we have the patience for that anymore. We typically have enough patience for a small little tweet or a simple little Facebook feed or an abbreviated email. It's amazing how this information has just got narrowed down to tiny things, and our patience gets thin. And one of the things I think Jesus does in this passage for Thomas and the disciples both, he is patient with them for them to, at their own speed, receive the information they need to receive so they are ready to do the work post-resurrection. Not everybody's going to get it right away. And there's kind of a staggering kind of aha moment for everybody. Someone's aha moment maybe right now. Another person's aha moment is a week from now. And we have to be patient as a community of faith, allowing people to come along and find their way into the journey of where they need to be in their life. The third gift, I would say, in terms of photography in the story, is the gift of repetition. Now, our family recently did a photo shoot, and in that photo shoot of the pictures that were saved, and we had a digital package sent to us, we had 137 digital pictures that were the completed pictures sent to us. In no way was that anywhere close to the number of photographs the photographer took in that session. My guess, it was upwards to 500 and 600 photos that they took of our family, but we got sent 137 of them. Now, the cool part about photography in terms of repetition is I could easily do the picture, and I could smile and get a nice picture of that, but the photographer was smart enough to know to take continual photos even when we weren't in the poses. In the non-pose moments, continued to take photographs of us and captured some of the most brilliant pictures in the ones that were not staged. Sometimes the repetition of constant photos, you end up finding jewels in the pictures you didn't anticipate would be the jewels of the photography. Now, a quick little mini story. I didn't share it first story. I saw Lindsay there, made me think of this. I recently posted on my Facebook page a picture of me from that photo bank of photos, and it was more than me, just smile. Now, I was showing some of the pictures to Lindsay last Sunday, and she got to see some of the photos, and there's one of my head kicked back, and my mouth is open, and it's this brilliant laughter coming out of my face. Now, that was not a staged photo. That happened in all the click, 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 click stuff. But it's actually one of the funnest photos in all of them in terms of the ones of me. And it wouldn't have happened had I just done a staged, here we're going to take this photo, this is what you're going to get. And repetition is crucial. Because if we think we just do something once, it's enough. We have to do it multiple times in order to get the result that we want. Jesus knows going back again and again and again, once is not enough. Enough times, enough repetition, that it seeps into their souls, and they get it, and they're excited about what they're about to do. Now, after the first visit, most of the disciples were excited, but they were not a unified unit of disciples yet. When Jesus returns a second time, he repeats his visit, does the same thing, has a conversation with Thomas. Now, what do you think? I'm on fire, Jesus. I'm ready to go. There's enough visits, enough opportunities, enough repetition that all those disciples are fired up, ready to do the work of sharing the good news of Jesus' love and welcome, inclusion, grace, and justice in the world. Now, after first service, Jeff Darlington came up to me and added a fourth item that I did not have because I had three, and he added a fourth. He said, one thing that's also important when you're trying to capture the right moment is you got to have film in the camera. We have to ready ourselves internally for all these things. We don't have all the work going on inside to work on our spirits, to work on our prayer life, to work on the depth of who we are and the grace of who we are. The rest of that work is hollow work. We have to have the film in us, ready to be present, ready to be patient, ready to just get after it time and time again until the work of justice and the arc of justice is bent one bit at a time. So if you want to focus on the moment, you can, but you know there's so much more underneath, behind the scenes, that makes all that possible.